All right, today we're jumping into something you've probably seen a million times, even if you didn't have a name for it. It's a sneaky little logical fallacy called Bulverism. We're going to break down what it is, how it works, and why it's such a powerful tool for completely shutting down a debate before it even gets started.
Okay, so have you ever been in a discussion, right? You're laying out your point, you feel pretty good about it, you've got your reasons, and then the other person just totally ignores all of it. Instead, they hit you with something like, oh, well, you would think that, you're a whatever, or you're just saying that because you want something. All of a sudden, your actual argument is out the window and they're putting you on trial instead.
Yeah, if that sounds familiar, listen up. The problem probably isn't with your point. Not at all. What you've just run into is a rhetorical shortcut, a trick. It's designed to win an argument not by proving you wrong, but by making it seem like you're not even qualified to have an opinion in the first place.
So here's what we've got on tap. We'll talk about this shortcut to winning, then define Bulverism properly. We'll look at a prime target for it, figure out the difference between real critique and just dismissing someone, check out some surface versus substance claims, and wrap it all up with why any of this actually matters.
You know, in a perfect world, a debate is all about finding the truth. But let's be real. Sometimes it's just about winning. And that's where this fallacy we're talking about really comes into play.
So here it is, Bulverism. It's a nasty little logical fallacy, and it works like this. You just assume your opponent is wrong. You don't prove it, you don't even try. You just take it as a given. Then you jump straight to explaining why they're wrong, blaming it on their motives, their background, or their psychology. You're not arguing with their point, you're just explaining them away.
Okay, so where did this weird name even come from? To really get it, we've got to look at its origin story, which is actually pretty clever.
The term actually comes from the writer C.S. Lewis. He imagined this fictional kid, Ezekiel Bulver, and the story goes that when Bulver was just 5 years old, he had this aha moment. He realized he didn't need to be right to win an argument. All he had to do was explain why the other person was wrong based on, well, who they were. What a powerful and kind of scary thing to figure out.
And here are the 2 simple steps. It's so easy, and that's why you see it everywhere. Step 1. Just assume the other person is wrong. No proof needed. Just decide it. Step 2. Play armchair psychologist. Explain away their error by attacking their motives. Boom. You've just dodged the entire need to actually make a real argument. And C.S. Lewis himself just nails it with this quote. He says, "You must show that a man is wrong before you start explaining why he is wrong." I mean, that's it right there. That's the basic rule of any honest conversation, and it's the very rule that Bulverism just throws right out the window. You have to do the work first.
Okay, so let's shift gears and see how this plays out in the real world. The source material we're looking at today points to one group in particular as a prime target for this kind of thing. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, often called the LDS Church.
So why them? Well, according to our source, there are a few reasons. For one, the church's core beliefs are pretty bold and unique, so instead of debating them, it can seem easier to just explain them away. Also, its history is pretty recent, 19th century, so it's easy to point to things and say, aha, that's the real reason. Its rapid growth can make people suspicious, thinking there's got to be some kind of manipulation going on. And that idea of personal revelation, that's often just written off as someone being emotionally vulnerable.
And this leads us to a really, really important point. We have to be clear on the difference between a fair critique and a flat-out dismissal. There's a huge gap between asking a real question and just trying to shut someone down with a bulveristic attack.
And this chart here really breaks it down. Look, a legitimate critique, its goal is to find out if something is true. It asks, is it true? And it focuses on the evidence. The whole point is to understand something better or to actually refute it. But Bulverism, the goal is totally different. It's to explain why someone believes something that you've already decided is false. It asks, why are you so silly for believing that? The focus isn't on evidence, it's on motives, psychology, and the outcome isn't understanding, it's just mockery. So let's look at a pretty blunt example from the source. Someone says, you wear magic underwear. That proves your religion is a cult. Whoa. Okay, see what's happening there? There's zero attempt to understand the actual theology or the significance of temple garments to members. It just slaps a mocking label on it, magic underwear, and then leaps to this massive conclusion. That's not an argument. It's a complete dismissal. It is pure textbook Bulverism.
Okay, so let's dig into this idea of surface versus substance. The source makes a really interesting argument here, that a lot of these attacks that seem so damaging on the surface,
well, they start to look a whole lot different when you actually look into the substance behind them. So here's a common surface claim. The argument goes, Joseph Smith, the founder of the church, was into treasure digging when he was young. Therefore, he must have been a con artist right from the start. See? It's a simple story, it's easy to grasp, and it seems to perfectly explain his motives as being dishonest. But let's take that deeper look, the source suggests. Turns out that kind of treasure-seeking, a sort of folk magic, was actually pretty common back in the 1820s in rural America. It wasn't as weird then as it sounds to us now. The source also points out that, historically, religious figures often come from humble or, let's say, culturally strange backgrounds. So when you add that context, it doesn't automatically scream fraud. It could just fit a pattern.
All right, here's another big one. The surface claim is this. Joseph Smith told the story of his first vision, which is like the central founding event of the church, several different times, and the details changed a bit. The conclusion people jumped to, he must have been a liar, making it up as he went along.
But again, the source says, hold on a second. Think about it. He was telling the story to different people at different times. You're going to emphasize different things in your private journal than you are in official church history, right? That's just how memory and storytelling work. In fact, the source makes the point that a real fraud would probably have their story down perfectly, one single, polished, unchangeable script. The fact that the core essential elements stay the same across all the accounts while the details shift for the audience, that, the source argues, could actually be a sign that it's authentic.
Okay, so let's zoom back out. We've looked at these specific examples, but why does any of this matter? Why is it so important to be able to spot Bulverism in the wild no matter what the topic of conversation is?
Well, here's the bottom line. The source argues that Bulverism is so dangerous because it completely short-circuits any chance of a real, reasoned debate. It just poisons the well. If you can just write someone off by attacking their motives, you never ever have to actually grapple with an idea that makes you uncomfortable or challenges your own views. It's a way to avoid the hard work of actual thinking. And when that happens on a big scale, what do you get? A world where we stop trying to understand each other and just start trying to explain each other away. It builds this culture of suspicion, right? Where the person you disagree with isn't just someone with a different point of view, they're a defective thinker, and it's your job to diagnose what's wrong with them.
So that leaves us with one final, and I think really important question for all of us. When we reach for this shortcut, or when we let other people use it on us, what are we really losing? How many good ideas, how many valid arguments, how many potential truths are we just throwing in the trash? All because we decided someone was wrong before we even gave them a chance to speak.